Scandal. The question is, who really pays? Jonty Bloom is here.
Well, Eddie, £390 million. That's what the fines and penalties for the Royal Bank of Scotland add up to on both sides of the Atlantic. The bank is the third major international bank to be caught rigging the Libor rate, which is used to set the interest rates and therefore prices of billions of pounds worth of financial products around the world. It's just the latest scandal to hit the banking industry, and once again it's keen to put it all behind it as soon as possible. Stephen Hester is the chief executive of RBS. He says that most of that £390 million will come from money set aside to pay staff bonuses, and the head of RBS's investment bank has gone down with the ship.
The head of our investment bank has taken a captain on the bridge position and left, even though he inherited these problems, as did the rest of us, and we will deduct something like £300 million in variable pay across the company, such that we are clear to everyone that control failings of this nature must be part of RBS's past and not its future.
The politicians have certainly turned the heat on RBS to make sure that it's the bankers themselves that will pay the majority of this fine. If all of it had come out of RBS's profits, then that would have cut the payout to shareholders. And since the British taxpayer owns over 80% of RBS's shares, that would have meant we would have been paying for their crimes. Still, almost £90 million of fines is not coming out of bonuses and will be paid to the Financial Services Authority in the UK. It pays that to the Treasury. So the taxpayer-owned bank will end up giving more taxpayers' money back to the Treasury. But even so, the Chancellor George Osborne said today things are beginning to change for the better.
What happened at RBS and other banks is totally unacceptable. At my insistence, the bankers, not the taxpayers, will pick up the bill. Those people who did wrong will face the full force of the law. This is a symbol of all that went wrong in the banking system, and in 2013 our reforms are turning people's anger into a positive force for change.
But for many others, that does not go anywhere near far enough. Vince Cable, the business secretary, said this morning that the government was in the worst possible position. It could not afford to nationalise RBS totally and tell it what to do, and it couldn't afford to privatise it without losing tens of billions of pounds. But Anne Pettifer from Prime Economics says that the government is being cowardly. After all, it owns more than 80% of RBS's shares and could just turn it into a state bank lending to British business and investing in infrastructure. Instead, she says, things are getting worse.
I feel the culture is probably more reckless than it was then, and that's because the government is so spineless in regard to the banks. So I feel we have done very little to change the culture because we haven't changed the rules and we haven't changed control. At the same time, we are massively subsidising these banks with very low rates of interest, with free money effectively from the Bank of England, with taxpayer guarantees. I would love to do business with that sort of public backing. The banks are enjoying all that while they, cock a snoop at all of us.
But none of this is going to help RBS get back on its feet or make it more profitable. That's why Nicholas Lakeland, an employment lawyer with Silverman Sherlock, says we may be cutting off our noses to spite our face. After all those bankers at RBS who've just lost their bonuses, the vast majority of whom have done nothing wrong, can easily up sticks and go and work for another bank, or even in another country.
RBS depends on the profits that these people make for them in order to maintain its profitability and pay us, the taxpayers, back for the money that they've been lent. It's actually a problem for all of us as taxpayers, because we need a successful RBS. We don't want an RBS that continues to decline. We want one that succeeds.
When dealers were fixing the Libor rate between them, one did so for the promise of some day-old sushi rolls, not a sign of how cheap and easy it was to persuade dealers to rig the market, but a sign of how contemptuous they were of the rules and regulations they were supposed to be bound by. At the time, we were told the best and brightest were making fortunes in the city by the sweat of their brow, but greed for profit and bonuses corrupted the system with ease, and no one even noticed. We are still paying the price.
Jonty Bloom, thank you. News in a moment. First, Michael Burke with a word about the Model Maze at 8.